Hey, this is Adam with the Adam Wines Guitar Academy. Today we're going to be talking about the rhythm guitar part under the third part of the guitar solo for Ride the Lightning in the series that we've been doing. This is a really fun one. This is has some really cool riffs in it. It has one riff that isn't like really any of the other riffs in the song, and then it has a riff that is very close to the bridge, but with some variation. So this is really neat. It's almost like a hidden riff that doesn't get talked about often. So I'm excited to go through this with you. First of all, here's a short of me playing it, so you understand what we're looking at, and then we'll get right into it. Okay, so this starts off with a heavily palm muted and fast riff using the E pedal. And it's not too bad, but it's just fast. We're going to be doing a lot of palm muting. If you don't recall, that is where you take this part of your palm and you rest it on the strings. We start with that, and it's just going to be down and up on the low E string, and it is going to be done 6 times. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, really, we want to count this in 16th notes, so it's really 1 E and 2 E. Now, on the and there of 2 is a 3 to a 0 on the low E string, so it's going to be a fret, and then you're going to pull it off. So you're going to play the 3rd fret on the low E string. I'm going to use my first finger, and then you pull it off. To get a good pull off, you just want to flick your finger with a little extra force, like a little more than you might think you want to. It gives it a nice pull, but obviously don't overdo that. Now, when you do that part, you don't palm mute. So everything is palm muted except for those 2 notes. So if we were to slow this down again and count it, we would have 1 E and 2 E and like that. Okay, so everything was palm muted except those last 2 notes. Now, after that, it basically just repeats that. It's the same 6 palm mutes and then that part again. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the pull out. But again, we want to count that, so it'd actually be 3E and 4E like that. So not too bad. So let's put this measure together, nice and slow. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and so I suppose the trickiest part besides the speed is just remembering to not palm mute on the pull off on the 2 times there. Now the second measure of this part, very similar, just the same thing. So another 1E and 2E and right there. But then here it does power chords, and it's going to do power chords on the A string and the D string. So we're going to have frets 2 with the index finger and fret 4 with the ring. And then we're going to just shift over to 3 and 5 and then come back to 2. And rhythmically, they're 8th notes and a quarter note. So if we were to slow this down and count, it would be 3 and 4. And just remember that the last power chord lasts a little bit longer. It's a quarter note. So if I put this measure together, it'll sound like this: 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4. So 16th notes slowing down into 8th notes slowing down into a quarter note. All right. Now I'm going to put those first 2 measures together, nice and slow. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4. All right, a little faster. A little faster. At the high speeds, you may want to just sit and practice that. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get rid of excess motion. So I'm not trying to jerk my wrist around a bunch. I'm trying to refine it as much as I can. The muscles that I end up using are really more in the thumb and the finger here. to try to explain it. So in other words, I'm not going crazy with my hand and my wrist. It's a very refined picking motion, like that. So if you want to just practice nice and slow like that, but really you're just trying to get rid of as much muscle tension as possible, and you're trying to get rid of any unneeded motion. That's the goal there. That's how the speed really gets there, because once you start really going at it, you can wear your hand out if you're using too much motion. So the more relaxed you can be, and the least amount of motion you can use is going to get you there with the speed. So you can just sit, go really slow, and just sit and focus on, like, can I use even less muscle movement than I'm already using? Can I use even less, and then start to speed it up? And then as I'm speeding up, we don't want tension. We don't want to tense our hand up. We don't want to be like, that's going to, cause problems and wear your hand out faster. So nice and slow, nice and easy. It's almost like this part of my hand is planted down as the base foundation, and then I'm going up and down super, with as little motion as possible. Almost like there's a little bit of hand movement, but it's really coming mostly from the first finger and the thumb. So hopefully that helps. Now, note-wise and music theory-wise, as mentioned, we have an E pedal basically happening the majority of the time. And then you are getting the 3rd fret here, which is a G, pulling back off to E. So really it's just E and G most of the time, which would pretty much give us the flavor of E minor, like the E minor chord. Then we hit the power chords B5, C5, and B5. And B would just be also part of the E minor chord, but then it goes to C, and that's that tritone flavor we've talked about, which is a nice heavy metal sound. So that's pretty cool. So this riff that we've just learned is played 4 times. Then after that, it's going to go into a riff that is very familiar to us, that's very similar to part of the bridge that we've talked about. There are some variations, but it's pretty similar, so you'll see what I mean. So the first measure is basically starting off with a C5 power chord. It's the 8th fret on the low E string and the 10th fret on the A string, and then it's also going to be the 10th fret on the D string. Now, that being said, we're not going to play it all together as one chord, but that's the frame of what's occurring, is this C5 chord here. So a C, G, C, basically. Now, we are also dealing with 16th notes. It's the same picking technique that we've talked about with that little bit of motion that you can use, and alternate picking and palm muting. So we're going to be starting here. I'm going to have the chord ready, but this isn't quite down, but it's just ready to go. And I'm going to go down, up, and that's palm muted. So that's 1 E and a, 1 E and a. Then we're going to do a down pick on the top part of the chord, the 10 and the 10, right there. And that is an 8th note starting on beat 2. So far, and also that wasn't palm muted. So far we have 1 E and 2, like that. Then it's going to go right back to the C palm mute for and then 3 E and then the top part of the chord again for 4, and then like that. Okay, so nice and slow. 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and so the part that's not palm muted, the top part of the chord, lasts for an 8th note, basically twice as long as all the other notes there. Okay. Now this rhythm is going to repeat on through the next measures. So we're going to take this shape and just come down a fret. Now we're on a B5. We have B, F sharp and B again, or 7, 9, 9. Okay, but it's the same. So we're going to go 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and okay, just like that. Then we're going to come down another fret, and we're on B flat 5, B flat, F, and B flat. So 6, 8, 8. And same thing, 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and okay. Then we're going to come down another fret for the next measure. So now we're on the 5th fret in 7 and 7, or A, E, A, so A5. So 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and all right. And then that is going to basically just repeat again. So that little sequence is going to get played twice. Now, With the picking, I found that the trickiest part was getting your pick not to slip and change position. So as you're picking that fast, your pick will have a tendency to maybe kind of turn on you a little bit, and that can be a little frustrating. So some things that can mitigate that is just having a firm grip on the pick, having a pick that you might not be able to see this, but this pick has a little bit of a grit on it so that it doesn't slip quite as much as some other picks. This is a John Petrucci signature pick, basically. But any pick that has that grit, I find helpful. And so that's one thing. Another thing is you can kind of overdo it with your finger a little bit to kind of keep it in place too. So normally I kind of hold my pick like that, but sometimes I found myself going like this just to get some extra stability. I didn't always have to do that, but that was something that did help. So at this high tempo, you might find that useful. So that's what I found to be the hardest part. Once your wrist and once your muscles in your hand are capable of the speed, the hardest part is getting the pick not to slip, in my opinion. So it's not too bad as long as you keep a nice grip. So, okay, moving on. As mentioned, that riff is done twice. Now, the third time around, it's a similar rhythm, but the chords are going to change on us a little bit. We're actually going to come to 8th fret on the A string. So we're playing an F5 on a different string set on the A, D, and G string now. So index finger is on 8 of the A string. Ring is on 10 of the D string and 10 of the G. And once again, we're not playing all that together, but it's the basis for the riff. So this is an F5 as mentioned. So we have F, C, and F, and it's going to go 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and like that. 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and all right. Then from there, it's going to come to the D5, and we're back to the E, A, and D string. So we're going to have our index on the 10th fret of the low E. We're going to have our ring on the 12th fret of the A and the 12th fret of the D string. And the rhythm is the same. So we have 1 E and 2 and however, here we shift. So this measure does not use this D5 the entire measure. So at this halfway point on beat 3, we're going to shift from the D5 or the 10th fret down to the 6th fret or the B flat 5. So we have 6, 8, 8 or B flat, F, and B flat again. All right, so that's going to go 3 E and 4. And so putting this together, we have a little bit of shifting as mentioned. 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and like that. Okay. Now, after that, the riff actually goes back to the riff we did a second ago with the C to B flat to A. Okay. All right. So one little mention here before we move on to the next part. When you are coming out of the A5 going into the part we just talked about up to the F, the trickiest part is shifting from here to here at this high tempo, right? So, you got the... right there. That's a tricky part. Is going from here to here cleanly because we're shifting strings too. We're going from E, A, and D to the A, D, and G. So there's a little bit of a trickiness. Not only are you shifting, but you're coming up, so your right hand needs to follow. So that's easy to kind of mess up at that high tempo. So just keep that in mind. Go slow. Take your time. Practice just maybe moving from here to here, getting used to that coordination. Okay, so moving on, as mentioned, the riff repeats, but once it's repeated down from here to here to here to here, that whole sequence, just like before. Once we get here, it's now going to come down to the F5 all the way down here, so down the octave from this F5. So this is going to be 1, 3, and 3, E, A, and D. Okay, and we're going to go 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4 and so same rhythm, same places where you don't palm mute, on the top part of the chord, etc. So it does that, and then finally it's going to have another measure where you've got two chords happening in one measure, but it's the same rhythmic idea. So now we're going to have G5 as the basis. So 3, 5, 5, and it's going to go 1, E, and 2. And but then here it's going to shift to the B flat right here at the 6th fret, 6, 8, 8, and it's going to go 3, E, and 4, and like that. So that shift's not quite as bad. And as a fun note, we have some chords that do not necessarily fit E minor. They could be thinking of them as like passing chromatic chords, but that will be more obvious when we go into the guitar solo. I think we'll get a better idea of what chord is being used, and maybe if there's a key change or whatever, we'll find that out as we're going through the solo. But just a brief note. So C5 could be an E minor. So could B5. Now the B flat 5, not necessarily. This is probably a passing tone, but we will find out more when we get into the guitar solo. We have an A5 that does work in E minor, so that's possible. Then we have the F5. Now an F is not an E minor, because in E minor you have F sharp. So this is either a passing chord or maybe they're switching modes or keys, but we will find out when we get into the solo. So, maybe they're thinking E Phrygian. For example, E Phrygian is basically C major starting on E. So E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, as opposed to E minor, which is E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, and D. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, let's take this whole sequence that's similar to the bridge. So I'm going to go a little slower and kind of talk about it a little bit as I'm playing. So we got the C5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and a B5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and a B flat 5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and a A5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and then the whole thing repeats. Okay, now here it's going to go to the part where we have that shift. So we're coming from this A5, shifting over here to this F5 on the new string set, A, D, and G. And so we have F5 up here, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and then shifting back down to the D5 over here, 1 E, and a 2, and then B flat 5, 3 E, and a 4, and then it is coming back to the sequence from before. So C5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and a B5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and a B flat 5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and then the A5, 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and like that. And then we have the end of the sequence, where we go down to F5, and we have 1 E, and a 2, and a 3 E, and a 4, and then the last measure, G5, 1 E, and a 2, and a shift to B flat 5, 3 E, and a 4, and just like that. Okay? And I did notice there was a D5 I forgot to talk about in the music theory analysis, but D5 could be also considered an E minor. But that will, as mentioned, reveal itself to us as we're playing the guitar solo, and we'll get more details about what they're thinking with the tonality and the harmony and the key. This is a lot of fun. These are some really cool riffs that kind of get skipped a lot because we usually focus on the guitar solo. So this is cool to see what James Hetfield is doing and kind of the foundation blueprint of what Kirk is working with when he does his guitar solo here. So this was super awesome to look at. In the next video, we will look at the actual guitar solo over this part. Take your time, go slow. Remember, with the fast alternate picking here in the palm muting, think less hand motion. Get your hand motion down to the bare minimum that you can get it to that keeps you relaxed. Okay? So if you're tensing, you're doing something wrong. So you should be nice and relaxed. And then also think about the kind of pick that you're using and making sure that pick doesn't slip on you. And another thing about the picks, whatever pick you choose, you want to go with the heavier side of picks. Like a medium or a light pick is probably going to be too flimsy for this to sound right, and you'll probably get frustrated with that. So if you're using a heavier pick with some grit on the pick, like that enables you to grip it without it slipping, is going to give you more success. So once again, I'm Adam with the Adam Wines Guitar Academy. I am available for private Zoom lessons if you're interested, and my contact details are in the description.